Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Twitch, and welcome to another edition of Lab Rats Culture. I'm incredibly excited for our next guest. I have known this guy for well over a decade now.
Yeah.
My man is one of the foremost, robotic artists, if I can call you that, robotic artist in the world. And as far as I've known him, been shaping culture and continuously getting better. And you have seen his skills through many mediums. You've seen him on So You Think You Can Dance. You've seen him in the Step Up series. You might have even seen him in a bank commercial. Do you know what I'm saying? Banks are hip to his robotics.
That one was crazy, man.
Blessed circles and stages all over the world. He is legendary. MADD CHADD, welcome to the lab, brother.
What up, man?
Man, thank you so much for coming through, man.
I gotta give you a happy birthday as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Was that yesterday?
That was yesterday. Yeah,
man.
thank
Happy
you.
Birthday.
The 35 Club. The 35 Club. It's real in here.
I'm coming in there
It's
soon.
real in
I'm
here,
coming
man.
in hot.
It's all good. It's warm. It's warm, brother.
It's toasty. You've achieved a level of comfortability
Absolutely.
and warmth. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just slid into that manhood. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
Pause. But Chad, let's take it back. Let's take it back. Maybe even
Sure.
like a little less than 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you paint a picture of your childhood?
Yeah, let's see. I was born in Ventura, California.
Okay.
I didn't grow up there at all. That was
Okay.
just the hospital that I was born in. But I grew up in Santa Paula from the years of 0 to 12. I lived in Santa Paula. Most people maybe don't know where Santa Paula is, but it's it's in Ventura County. It's between a couple cities called Fillmore and Ojai. A lot of people have heard of Ojai. Ojai is
of
like
course,
this
yes. Gorgeous.
kind of
Yeah.
and it's like got this rep for this kind of like hippie kind of vibe and culture now.
Yeah.
But my grandpa ended up there because of citrus. He's from Texas. He came out here. He worked for Sunkist, and then he ended up in Santa Paula. So that's where I grew up. I grew up next to nature. Well, not the first house, but the second house I lived in was like right hillside, like behind these kind of like mountains. So we saw like mountain lions and snakes and stuff like that. We were always like building forts and whatnot. I grew up doing kind of like a lot of like outdoor activities and like bikes and
Right.
I
Now,
would say
you
like
fish. Now, does this include fishing and camping? Like
I
the
did a
whole
lot
situation?
of camping.
Okay.
I did a lot of camping, a little bit of fishing.
Okay.
A little bit of fishing. My dad was like, a guy's guy, so he was into that sort of stuff. But my mom was like, just anti-murdering small animals, pretty much.
Okay.
So,
All right.
so I think as time went on, she kind of like got him out of that sort of
Right,
stuff. But
right.
he did do some fishing, some hunting. So I fished a little bit when I was a kid, but we did do a lot of camping, a lot of camping. There's a lot of good camping up there in Ventura County. We used to go to this place called Wheeler's Gorge all the time, and it's got these cool like waterfalls, and they have this area called punch bowls, and it's essentially like the water went through the rocks and formed like these like slides, and then there was these like literally like you could sit on the rocks and slide down and like slide through the rocks, and then you would hit like a circular area that the water had like bored out in the rock, and it was like a washing machine, and you would like slide down, spin around in this, and then it would shoot you out down another slide. It was like kind of dangerous because like right next to the rocks was like a drop off of like 100 feet, but it was like, yeah, it was really fun.
Wow. Where is this place called again? Sorry.
I think Wheeler's Gorge is technically in Santa Paula.
Shout out Wheeler's Gorge. That
Yeah,
sounds really fun.
Wheeler's Gorge, yeah. Punch bowls.
Yeah. But wait, with all of this, okay, so outdoorsy type, do a lot of activity, outside playing in nature. Where did the introduction to music and the arts, where did that come in?
Yeah, so I was admittedly a huge fan of Michael. I watched Moonwalker probably 7 to 10 times a day, every day
100%.
for a chunk of years. Admittedly, again, I was terrible at imitating Michael. I tried my
Right.
damnedest. Like I went for it. I got some footage of me when I'm like 7 or 8, like kind of like
Oh.
trying to. It's pretty spedly. It's not a good look. Simultaneously, I was into outdoor activities and sports and
Hmm.
everything and nature. But it just wasn't a thought. It wasn't like, "Ooh, I'm into nature." It was just
Hmm.
I was just around it.
Right.
The thing I was really into like technology and robotics
Hmm.
and a combination of things in that world. Like I've always been kind of a nerd,
Hmm.
like video games, and my dad would watch these old movies. I'd always watch like old movies with my dad in the middle of the night, and it
Right.
was
Right.
always like I just remember like over and over again seeing like these old like movies anytime from like the 60s or like mid to late 50s all the way
Hmm.
up until the 80s and seeing like I'm gonna call it like shitty animation or
Right.
like
Oh,
bad
okay. I know what you're talking
like
like.
bad claymation,
There you go. Yeah.
like well at the time like it was blowing people's
Hmm.
minds back then because they thought it was real.
Absolutely.
And like as a kid I'm watching it like in the 80s like wow, this is really bad, but something about the way they
Right.
moved
Yeah.
was um it was interesting to me,
Right.
you know what I mean? So I had Michael. Michael was a huge,
Hmm.
thing, like a through line in my life. I was always into Michael. And then my dad was really into Led Zeppelin and the Doors.
Hmm.
And so that was like, music was always like in my life. And it wasn't, I mean, like hip hop and stuff like that didn't come into my life until like much later.
Okay.
But through through kind of like some of the outdoor activities and sports and
Hmm.
stuff like skateboarding and
Hmm.
BMX and surfing and stuff like that. Um, I got into these tapes, Camp Kill Yourself, and it's like these skate
Can't kill
tapes.
yourself.
And it's kind of like the guys who were like the precursors to Jackass. Like Bam Margera was in
Okay.
there, and
And
they
now these VHS tapes or these cassette tapes?
VHS. These
Okay,
are
these
VHS
VHS
tapes.
tapes.
Yeah,
Okay.
VHS tapes.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, this is a little later on. This is like probably junior high, you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
And so I dropped the Michael thing, like trying
Right.
to imitate Michael. That just wasn't working out for me. And
Right.
I was like sports and extreme sports. That
Hmm.
was kind of like how I spent most of my time. But I always was kind of like a reserved person, and
Hmm.
I grew up in a pretty like strict household, and it was,
Hmm.
one of our mantras was kind of like don't be a problem, like don't
Right.
don't
Right.
cause
Right.
problems, like
Right.
don't be an issue, just
Right.
kind of like stick to yourself. And
Right.
um there was something that wasn't being like expressed in me,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? I was very quiet and reserved, and I was like, I'd get into sports and I'd be like pretty good at them, but there was just something missing, I guess.
Right.
And when I found these like Camp Kill Yourself tapes, I don't know, it lit a light bulb in my head, and for whatever reason, I wanted to do what they were doing, and
Right.
they were doing like crazy stuff, like just these insane pranks that were like putting their bodies in physical
Right.
danger,
Right.
and kind of being maybe a little too like pestering people a little
Right.
too
Right.
much, like it was
Now,
a little over the
how
top.
old were you when you were watching these tapes?
Probably I want to say like 12 or
Yeah,
13.
so the perfect age for you to see these tapes,
Yes,
right?
yes. So I had just moved. We moved to from Santa Paula to Camarillo,
Right.
which is still Ventura County. Camarillo's like next to Oxnard, and between like it's like if you take the you've got the valley, and if you keep going up the 101, you
Yeah.
eventually run into like Camarillo.
Right.
But it's like suburbia. And so I moved there, and I started watching these tapes and stuff, and I just for some reason I like my for me at that point in time, like dance was the furthest thing from my life.
Hmm.
It was like I was into Michael when I was a kid, and I
Hmm.
still appreciated his music and a lot of other music, but it just dance wasn't
Right.
in my wheelhouse. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I thought it would be funny as a way to kind of like get myself. I mean, none of this was like super conscious, but
Hmm.
now in hindsight, I see what I was doing.
Right.
It was a way for me to kind of get out of my shell. I started like dancing as my prank. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Where it was
Yeah.
like, And me and a friend started doing like, just ironically, a lot of the stuff was ironic. It was like, ironically, we got into disco. And
Right. Okay.
so we would dress like the full, like we would wear bell bottoms and chains and everything and do like little disco dance performances. And it was terrible. You know what I mean? But there was like, out of nowhere during these little like dance performances, I would break out like a little bit of robot. And I didn't even know I was like decent at robot. I had no idea, but that was one of the things, like, you know, watching Michael and watching like the Jackson 5 and Dancing Machine and stuff like that. So I would do like some disco stuff, like some Saturday Night Fever or whatever. And then like out of nowhere, like I'd throw a little robot, you know? And this was all to entertain my friends.
Okay.
This was like a joke or a prank and you know, it evolved over the years. And it incorporated like sea walking. It incorporated something called skanking, which is like from ska music.
Okay.
I kind of got into ska music for a while, and a little bit of robot, and then like a little bit of breaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
because I've seen you do windmills before.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we used to practice. Like, again, ironically, we would practice in my garage. Like, we would practice like sea walking or practice like what we thought was popping. We didn't really know what popping was. You know what I mean? It was like, you know, like liquid. There's a guy down the street from me who went to raves, and he would like do some liquid stuff, and I was like, I don't know about that, but like I would try to do some glides, you know, or whatever.
And at this time, had you seen the likes of like Wiggles or anybody? Not even if you didn't know that, like, hey, that's Mr. Wiggles. Like, had you seen?
No clue.
Okay, got it.
I had not an inkling of any of this stuff. I had no clue. And it kind of evolved into like me bringing a boombox to like parties, or just walking into like a Subway, like our local restaurant, or like a library, putting down the boombox and like doing some like crappy robot, and then like like a 6-step, and then like some disco moves, and just randomness, just as like a social experiment, kind of almost. And to just like, I don't know, I felt like I needed to do something to express myself. And one time we're like practicing in my garage, and one of my neighbors, he's over, we're messing around, and we're like trying to do handstands. We didn't know what we were doing, right? And he goes down out of nowhere, he does a coffee grinder. And I'm like, what is that? You know? And he's like this kind of like smaller guy, kind of agile and like athletic. His name's Matt Polistrini. So this was like my brother, Eric, my good friend, Matt Nuttall, and like some neighbors would come over and screw around with us. You know what I mean? So it was like a small group of us. But he does this coffee grinder, Matt Polistrini. And I'm like, dude, show me that. Like, what is that? And I start doing the coffee grinder. And, you know, it takes me like 3 weeks to figure out like what this thing is. And our garage is open one day, and I'm doing the coffee grinder. And we had some neighbors, they were Korean, and one of the kids was like 3 years older than me or something. And by this time, I was probably like 15 or 16. And he had gone to college, and he was back for summer school. And I'm doing, and these guys were kind of like a little scary, because he was like a part of this, like, it wasn't a real gang, but it was like kind of like a Korean gang, like a car gang. It was like the Decepticons. Like, they thought they were a real gang, but like, you know, who knows? I don't think they were really like, you know,
they weren't
not the real deal. But he comes over, and he's just like, yo, you guys break? And I was like, what? No, like, we're just messing around, you know? And he's like, yo, check this out. And he kicks his shoes off, and he proceeds to do like flare, windmill, flare, halo. And we're just like, wait, what? Like, what was that? I was like, dude, I want to do that. Like, that was crazy. And he's just like, nah, fool, you just a big, tall, goofy white boy. And just like, leaves. And that was it. That was like the end of it. And I was like, what? Dude, like, seriously, it sounds cheesy and like cliche, but it was like, and I literally didn't see him again, like, ever. But it's planted that seed in my head. And I was an athlete, so I was competitive.
You still haven't seen this guy to this day?
No, I don't think so. No, I've seen his younger brother. His younger brother was into hip hop too. He would come over. He like showed us like the Rozelle and Kitty Muhammad CD when it first came out, like back in the day. But yeah, from that point, like, I was like, I want to break. I want to learn to like. That was the first time where like I saw it as something beyond just like an ironic like counterculture funny thing to do. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm gonna teach myself windmills.
Right.
So 3 weeks later, I was doing windmills in my garage, and it lit that like competitive spark. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I'm just kind of like, you know, the internet was like still pretty young at that time, and I'm trying to find stuff online. I think this is like 98 or 99.
Okay.
And I'm trying to like where can I learn?
The time of like breakdance.com.
Yes.
The pixelated situation.
Yes. So I found like the GIFs. You know what I mean? Of like of the windmill GIF. Right.
Shout out to the person that drew that, by the way.
That made the windmill GIF like back in the day.
Took the time to make a GIF of a 6-step and like a thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah.
So I ended up going to through online forums. I found out about Workman's, which was a hip hop shop on Melrose in LA. And I went there, and it had like hip hop gear, like clothes and stuff like that. But then they had like, you know, stuff for painting, like the spray can tips and stuff like that for graffiti and whatnot, and DJ equipment. And then they had a bunch of tapes, VHS tapes.
All right.
And I remember I picked up Battle of the Year '98.
Right. Okay.
And something else. I picked up like one other tape. It was like Freestyle Session something. I don't remember what it was, but I picked up a couple tapes. And again, like at this point, I didn't know what popping was. I had no clue about popping. I was just like, it's all breakdancing. I'm gonna learn how to break dance. But I was into it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I started breaking, and just training in my parents' garage. They were kind of like, what the hell are you doing? Like, but you know, also like partially supportive. Like I remember my mom picked up like some linoleum for me, like out at the back of Home Depot that was left back there. You know what I mean? And she was kind of like, you just do your homework, but like here's this linoleum.
That's awesome.
So I'm like learning how to break, but during this period, I'm like also really into like, you know, track and basketball and football and stuff like that. And because of track, I ended up getting like some knee injuries. And I ended up having my first knee surgery my junior year of high school. And so it was like I had been breaking for like maybe year and a half, 2 years, something like that. But it was like I couldn't really keep training. You know what I mean? So simultaneously, one of my best friends in high school, my friend Ryan Creddick, he surprised me for my birthday. He like brought me to, he got me tickets to, I don't know how he found out about it. But he got me tickets to Freestyle Session 2000. And this was like Style Elements was there. That's the first time I saw Cloud. I saw Rock Force Crew. I saw Iron Monkey. I saw all these dudes. Like I got to see all this crazy stuff in person, but it was hard because I couldn't like practice. I couldn't train, but I was like super inspired. And then I saw like a little bit of popping, like a tiny bit, and I was kind of like, what is this? Like I still didn't understand what it was, you know what I mean? And like I'm like, they're like flexing their muscles to the beat of the music. Like I don't know what this is. And I thought it was pretty cool. I was interested, but I wasn't like fully in, you know what I mean? But in my head, I'm like, oh, this might be something I can kind of get into this because my knees are messed up, and maybe I can practice this. And I meet some of the guys who are there. And then I go to another event, B-Boy Summit. I think that was the year 2000 as well, or maybe 2001. I go to B-Boy Summit, and I see popping again. And again, I'm kind of like, I go there to see B-boying, right? I go to B-Boy Summit to see B-Boys, and like, this is a cool time, man. Like Black Eyed Peas would go to all the B-Boy events and perform, and they were B-Boys. They were like, they were like a part of the culture that, you know, LA had in the 90s. LA had like its own freestyle hip hop dance. You know what I mean? That was like different than anything people are seeing now, as far as like, I mean, there are elements of it now that are incorporated. But yeah, I mean, it had its own thing. Like, and the Black Eyed Peas were in the mix. They were like doing these dance styles, you know? And it was kind of like a hybrid of like popping and house and b-boying and then just some of their own stuff that was like interesting, almost kind of like this drunken style with like off balance.
And then they had a couple music videos that at the end they got down for a little bit.
So I was there. I was like excited to see them and stuff, but I got stuck. I got stuck in this like popping circle, just like watching like, what's going on? And I remember it was like Aki was there from Japan, and there was like Popula, and I remember seeing J-Rock, this guy Spacewalker from the Bay, Frantic. I saw all these people, and I was like, dude, what is this? Like, and I started talking to some people on the side, and I mean, I showed them a little bit of like what I could do, like a little bit of robot, and they're like, dude, you're actually like pretty dope. Like, you have like you should get into this, you know? And two guys like kind of made contact with me, I'll say. A guy named Tabo and Wave-O-Matic. Rest in peace, Wave-O-Matic. I mean, to me, he's one of the most influential poppers in the scene of all time, because he was that guy who, like, you know, popping's got kind of this energy about it, this air about it, where it's, you know, it's a battle dance, and it's not super like inclusive right off the bat, and it's kind of like, who are you? You know what I mean? What are you about? Like, you know, and you have to earn your place in the culture. You have to earn your respect, you know. But Wave-O-Matic was this guy who was just like, dude, like you're into popping, like come get down with us, like whatever. And so he invited me to Homeland, and Homeland was a spot in Long Beach that now is like world famous, like for being one of the you know, popping landmarks. I guess it sort of initiated like the renaissance of popping in many ways, like that location specifically. But when I first started going, it was like there was a b-boy night, and some poppers would get together on the b-boy night, and so I started like hanging out with those guys a little bit, and then Tabo, he asked me to go to this event. It was Pandora's birthday party. It was Pandora's birthday party. I didn't know who Pandora was. He's like, there's gonna be a lot of poppers there. And at the time, it was like poppers weren't getting together. There was like 5 of us that would get together at Homeland, and that was it. And you would see some poppers at raves. Raves were like kind of the way popping made its comeback in many ways. But
wait, let me just address this really quick too, because this is before the age of everyone having a cell phone, to which you would easily be in contact with one another to say, hey, we're about to meet up. So also, I just want everybody listening / watching to remember that through all of these meetings, when they actually got together, that actually took incredible effort and love for the culture, I would have to say, because it wasn't as simple as just sending a text. You actually had to commit to going somewhere in hopes that the other person would go as well, and then kind of go from there.
And you had to like commit. You had to commit to, you know, we would mostly like interact through internet forums and be like, Homeland's on tonight, Tuesday night. We're gonna try to be there around 10. You know what I mean? And so you would be there at 10. You would figure it out, you know? And that's a big thing, that like a big piece of advice that I would have for like the new generation, you know, is, you know, we had to dig deep to find anything, to find another person who even did this stuff. Like, we had to dig deep. Like, it took me, many months, maybe even years to really find the culture. Like, I knew there was something out there, or I hoped there was, you know what I mean? But once I started first like finding little pieces and little elements, and trying to like, I remember this one, I have this one like small quick story, side note, but when I got to UCLA, once I was in UCLA, I'd met some b-boys, and I had been to like a couple little jams and stuff, but like I hadn't found like what I was looking for. You know what I mean? I was still like, there's gotta be more. There's gotta be like, I gotta find, you know, more of this like popping kind of stuff. And I remember one night at like 2 a.m. or something, I was listening to a radio show, a UCLA sponsored radio show, where they would play like drum and bass. It was like pre-dubstep, and they would play like drum and bass, you know, vinyl, and I would just listen to it. Some of it was like electro bass, and I was like, dude, this music's pretty cool. I feel like it's in the realm of this stuff. Like, so I called in to the radio show, and asked the girl, the DJ, I asked her, like, do you know, like, any poppers? And she did. This was the crazy part. She did. Like, and this is like, dude, nobody was popping at the time. Like, and so this is a crazy story because she was like, I used to date a popper named Poppin' Todd, who later on became my roommate. Like, me and this guy lived together later on down the line after I like dropped out of UCLA and like was on like the full poppers path. Like, me and him became roommates. And I told him, dude, I was like, I've been looking for you, man. I've been looking for you for like 2 or 3 years, bro. Like, because he felt he like he was around and then he kind of like dipped out for a while and like, but yeah. So back on track to Pandora's birthday party.
Right.
So Tabo invites me to Pandora's birthday party. And this is the first time I'm going to an event in Southern California. Like Freestyle Session and B-Boy Summit were these events where people are coming from everywhere.
Right.
So the poppers I was seeing at B-Boy Summit, for example, were like, a lot of them were like Japanese and French.
Yeah, okay.
And my mind was blown because like I was confused. I thought this was like an LA thing, a Cali thing, or a New York thing. You know what I mean? I didn't even, and so I'm like, how are these guys like in their mid 30s to 40s, like, and they're dope at these styles?
Exactly.
I didn't get it. I didn't understand the story and what was going on. I didn't understand the history at that point. But I go to Pandora's birthday party, and this is the first time I'm seeing other poppers from Southern California that are all coming together in one spot. You know what I mean? And I'm there. I'm like checking stuff out. This group called Motion Sickness was there.
Okay.
That's like Legend, a dude named Flash, a dude named Popzilla, French Twist. Tempo was in there.
Yeah.
They're from San Diego or Oceanside. I know a lot of them were from Oceanside, and they were already dope. They were like a crew that was already good. They'd already been doing this for like 5-10 years. You know what I mean? Pandora was already dope, and I was just kind of like, whoa, this is like, I found something, you know what I mean? I found like a little culture.
You were in the scene, bro.
Yeah, I found the scene.
Yeah.
And so that night, I'm like kind of doing my thing a little bit, you know, like trying to like be inspired and pick some stuff up. And at this point, I'm still like, popping's cool, but I don't know really like what my place is in this. I'm just I'm just checking it out, you know?
Right.
And Tabo's there with me, and he's like, he like taps me on the arm. He's like, hey, watch, like, check this guy out. And I kind of like look over, and in the circle is this middle-aged black guy in a full white suit. And he just kind of like sets up and just turns into a cyborg. Like he settles himself, kind of looks around,
and then
boom,
right.
And that was like the first time in my life that just something right there, right in front of me, had me like questioning whether or not what I was seeing was real. Like, whether or not this was actually possible. Like, what, like, and so simultaneously, I'm like literally disgusted. Like, he made me feel actually, like, when people say, yo, that was ill, that was sick, like, whatever, like, no, man, he literally actually made me nauseous.
Right.
Like, I felt like I needed to grab onto something. Like, I was losing my balance because I was.
I know the feeling, bro.
Yeah. So, like, whoops. Sorry about that.
You're good.
So, simultaneously, I'm getting tripped out. And I'm also, like, something in my cells is being activated. Like, something in my DNA, all those movies I watched growing up, the kind of like crappy animatronics I was into, and like robots, and the kind of the kind of fantasy weird world that was in my head, like, all just kind of like morphed. It was like, you know, Carnage or Venom or something in the comics, where like the symbiosis occurred, and it was just like, and I felt like watching him in that moment is such a weird like analogy, but I felt like we were related. Like, he was my long lost uncle or something, you know what I mean? Like, he was family. We shared some sort of deeper like DNA or something, you know what I mean? And it was just, dude, in that moment, everything changed for me. Like, everything, like, I was like, oh, popping's cool, b-boying's cool, and then it was just like, I
Absolutely.
have to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm gonna like,
Right.
and it wasn't even a matter of like, at that point, I was just appreciative to have seen him. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, I gotta train with him. Like, I gotta learn. Like, it was just, I was just like that. I was like walking around like just affected.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what was that?
Right,
Like, I
exactly.
got it. And from that point on, I swear for like, at least, I mean, for the next year. So I didn't meet him again for a year.
Right. Now,
Right?
Who is the dancer? I know you're keeping it vague, but I'm like,
Yeah. So that's Bopping Andre. You know,
legendary.
Short of my family, you know,
Right.
the most influential person in my life. You know,
Wow.
bar none. I mean, he
Right.
changed my whole trajectory.
Right.
Like, he changed my like, well, you know, what I was about. You know,
Right.
and I think in life, like, we all have those moments. You know, we get our minds blown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it happens. Like, you know, and it's just a matter of like, you know, what are you gonna do about it?
Exactly.
You know, and that was the first time in my life where, like, you know, I had my mind blown, and I knew exactly like what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
I was just gonna work my
Right.
fucking ass
Right.
off until I achieved that ability to blow people's minds,
Right.
to give them that feeling. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to imitate Bop and Andre.
Right.
I wanted to give people that feeling of magic,
Right.
of that feeling of, you know, anything's possible.
Absolutely.
Like that feeling of just the magic, the fantasy, the otherworldly, like,
of course.
you know.
Which also, real quick, just side note, kind of speaks to the power, the significance, and just how special this circle actually is. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
Do you know what I mean? The
Yeah,
spirit,
because
and we can get into that, but just, you know, this is an example of, because here's the truth of the matter. He didn't know that you had just turned around to see him for the first time. He was just doing what he did.
Yes.
And you weren't going into the circle saying, okay, show me something impressive right now. I'm here for my first time. Like, do a backwards flip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
but there's something,
know?
There's something to be said about Bop and Andre, you know, specifically. And there's something about his, obviously the technique, you know, the technique is the thing that really like blows your mind. But there's a stage presence, a circle presence, you know what I mean? That's very important to what he does and what I do. And he didn't, you know, a lot of dancers maybe, like, you know, they feel the music, they're on the side, they kind of start vibing out, whatever, you know, and then they slowly like work their way into the circle. And by the time they're really getting down, you're like, okay, I see what you're doing. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
He came out, presented himself, looked around, made sure everybody was ready to accept his gift, you know, and sort of settled, you know, kind of, you know, shook off some dust and whatever, and then boom, and just, you know what I mean, made sure that the start was with an exclamation point, you know what I mean? Made sure that you knew what was happening, or that you knew to pay attention.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was like a big, that stands out in my mind, you know what I mean? And it always stands out in my mind with, to me, some of the greats, you know what I mean? Bop and Andre, Flat Top, Pete. I mean, you were talking about Flo earlier. Absolutely. Flo's a master of that. You know what I mean? Of setting the stage. So, dude, from that moment on, it was like, I have to master this. I have to become a master at blowing people's minds. You know what I mean? And I didn't know, I didn't know anything about the technique. I didn't know like what I needed to work on. I didn't know, a lot of it was just, trial and error for me. Like, I mean, there were a few things that I wanted to work on that I saw from him, you know what I mean? That, and first of all was just like, you know, moving mechanically. that illusion of, you know, there's the robot. People, everyone can do the robot. You know what I mean? But I wanted to look like a machine.
Right.
I wanted to look like I was actually
Right.
moving, like there were actual like gears and servos like starting and
Right.
stopping inside me,
Right.
you
Right.
know, or whatever the physics are that I decided, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to hit hard. That was
Right.
the other thing, you know. There was something like primal that stood out
Mm-hmm.
about, you know, the combination of this like um, clean, controlled style, and then this power that came out of it. The
Right.
contrast of that,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It really resonated with me, and there was a hardness, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like a edge
Mm-hmm.
to it that I was just like, I want to be hard, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
be, and that's something that always stood out to me about like the popping culture,
Mm-hmm.
is that there's this this energy, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And a lot of it, you know, a lot of it comes from like, you know, gang culture, and
Right.
but it was their way to sort of you know, squash beef without violence, you know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And
Yeah.
so they're coming, you know, aggressive, but
Right.
not necessarily,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and it would
Right.
happen,
Right.
like
Right.
obviously it would happen, but so yeah, for the next year I just all day every day, all day every day,
Wow.
all day every day. And
And
I'm talking like I like sleep was not of much concern. It
right.
was like
Of course.
I would go for like 2 or 3 days until I had to crash out for like 3 or 4 hours, and then I would, and
Right.
then, you
Right.
know, rinse and repeat. Like it was
Absolutely.
just all the time.
Now, can you talk about that? And this is really interesting to me because what is that training regimen now? I'm sorry. What is that training regimen? Because this is also again going back to the time. This isn't a time where he then walked away and was like, "Okay, that's Bop and Andre. So like, let me look up a clip to see Bop and Andre." You burned it in your memory what you saw. You know what I mean? What you
Yes.
saw and what you felt, and you went from there. And of course, you knew people. Now, were you practicing with anybody already?
Yeah.
Since you had kind of been on the scene, were you already kind of practicing in that specific style, or was he the one
I
that
had
made the switch?
Yeah, but when I saw Bop and Andre, I had literally only been to a couple practice sessions or a
Right.
few practice sessions. I'd been to
Right.
Homeland a few times, and you know, they were literally just like a couple guys would teach me, you know, like how to hit my
Mm-hmm.
tricep,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, how to like lift my arm and stop it, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Or, you know, the beginnings of like an arm wave, some of which I knew a little bit already just from
Mm-hmm.
watching like Battle of the Year '98, or because back then it was like in the '90s it was like your b-boy crew had one popper.
Right.
There was no popping crews. Like popping wasn't really a thing like that. It was just a part of b-boy culture, you know what I mean? So you had a
Mm-hmm.
b-boy crew, and then like each b-boy crew had like one popper, not each but some did, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, Air Force crew had Bionic Man, or am I, is it Rock Force crew? Okay, I'm having a brain fart right now, but anyways, Style Elements had Tommy Boy,
Mm-hmm.
the family had Salah,
Mm-hmm.
and people had like, rock steady crew like Mr.
Mr. Wiggles.
Wiggles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they had other, you know, there were other poppers, but like
Right.
at that time in the '90s, that's all I had seen, you know,
Right.
was like,
Okay.
but I knew some stuff, you know what I
Right.
mean? So I was
Right.
like messing around with what I
Right.
knew, and then trying to pick up some other things. But you know, the robot always kind of like came natural to
Mm-hmm.
me. Like that was just, you know, it was a joke, but then people would be like, ah,
Right. Because it's kind of the
oh,
ultimate
it's
party trick.
kind of, yeah.
Seriously, it really is. I don't know if there's a time where that gets old because it,
And if you could do it
especially at the
well,
level that, that's what I was about to say.
you shut it
the level that
down.
you do it.
Yeah.
Yo, anywhere, somebody is gonna stop and be like,
Yeah.
"What's going on? Like, what's going on right now?"
Yeah,
you know
so
what I mean?
even
Like,
before I found like the popping scene at all,
Yeah.
like the robot was like, I had a little bit of a natural
Yeah.
knack for that, you know.
Okay.
And we all have like little things that we have a natural knack for, you
Right.
know. But it was like, I essentially, you know, like I said, I started training.
Mhm.
Like, I wasn't thinking like I need to train,
Mhm.
you know. It was more of just I just started doing it, and one of my good friends, David, he goes by Elsewhere.
Mhm.
Um,
Oof.
Yeah,
Oof.
Elsewhere, I used to practice with Elsewhere back in the day, and Tetris and Wave-O-Matic
Mm-hmm.
introed me to him,
Mm-hmm.
and we would get down a little bit, and he had some like really cool insights. Again, this is like pre like any type of social media or anything like that, and like we had an email club at one point where we would share videos.
Oh wow.
And
Okay. Okay.
this is when so like and Elsewhere's video went viral
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
through
Absolutely.
email,
I feel like Elsewhere might have been the first.
dude.
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. If this is like a fact, but he's definitely one of the first dancers to have a viral dance video because if you know what, if I can find the link, I'm gonna include it in the little comment section because I can guarantee you most of
Collaboration.
anybody has seen the video that we're talking about. But go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
the
Go ahead.
Korean cultural event
Bruh.
collaboration.
Bruh.
His neighbor was throwing the event and asked him to be a part of it, and because he knew he danced. And Mike Song is involved in that video too. If nobody knows that, check your boy. Mike Song battles Elsewhere back in like 2000 or 2001 or something. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. But Elsewhere's whole thing was like he had this, theory, and I mean he's one of the most original movers of
Yeah.
all
Of
time.
course. Of course.
Of all
Mm-hmm.
time. And man, dude, the crazy thing is he got so much hate back then. Like the scene
Oh yeah.
just gave him the boot. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? But it was like they couldn't wrap their heads around what
Mm-hmm.
he was doing. But his whole thing was like, you go see a dancer one time,
Mm-hmm.
you get inspired, you go practice. You can never with that approach, you'll never look like that dancer.
Right.
You can't look like them.
Right.
You can't help but bring your own style to
Right.
it because you have nothing to copy. You just have that one image in your
Exactly.
head,
Exactly.
and then your brain. It's like it's like what our brains do with like stories or events
Mm-hmm.
that happened in the past or dreams, or
Right.
we
You
morph it and shift it and
exactly.
make it fit our bias or
Absolutely.
our story. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was his theory was, or his approach was, watch a dancer, get inspired, go train,
Mm-hmm.
go practice,
Mm-hmm.
get in your garage,
Right.
get in your bedroom, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and just train.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his other approaches, and I was already doing this, but
Right.
hearing him say it, like, he's the one who put me onto this term, habitual training.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's what I do. Like, I train habitually. Like,
Right.
I made it a habit to move robotically, whether
Absolutely.
I'm in the car or
Yes.
it's like
Okay.
this
All right.
this background process, like
Yeah.
you're doing a bunch of stuff on your computer, but you're transferring files or something
Right.
in the background.
Right.
That's what I started doing constantly. Like I would have not only the thought of like conceptualizing different ways of
Mm-hmm.
moving, or I was inspired by this animatronic at Disneyland or whatever, and
Right.
just having that in the back of my head. But also just like even while I was talking to people, as annoying as
Of
it probably
course.
was,
Yeah.
like I would just be, like kind
Right.
of,
Right.
or just feeling like what does it feel like if I move my stomach this way, or if I,
Right.
flex this pack, or I
Right.
could kind
Right.
of flick my head like
Right.
that, and
Right.
just it was all the time.
Right.
And it was this is kind of like how I also became like a performer in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. Like I started roboting in public,
Mm-hmm.
like just not really to entertain people, but like just habitually doing it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Right.
and my friends would be like, "Yo, dude, we gotta film this," like whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was always like a through line for me, was like filming stuff. My dad,
Right.
I grew up, my dad always had a camcorder, not really a camera, but like a
Wow.
camcorder.
Okay.
I remember like when I was a little kid, he sold a car to
Mm-hmm.
buy his first like camcorder. He sold a El Camino for like $2,000 or something, and got one of the first camcorders. So it was like the camcorder was always
Mm.
around. So when I was starting to do like some of the like jackass camp kill yourself sort of stuff, it was
Right.
like that was a factor. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what was gonna happen with the internet and stuff like that,
Right.
but
Right.
like I always kind of liked that like documentary style like video,
Yeah.
and that's kind of stayed with me
Mm-hmm.
to this day. And as I started doing like more you know, habitual robot
Right.
training,
Right.
it was like I would have my friends like film me like in the grocery store, and
Right.
I would um, go through the whole thing as a machine, as a robot. You know, I
Right.
would enter the store, I would go like find a cart, I would
Right.
go and like walk through the aisles and you know grab my cereal and like you know and then have
Yeah.
like glitches because
Yeah.
a robot isn't
Right.
you
Isn't
know they're
perfect. Huh?
trying to be a
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
but
Right.
it's not really happening.
Right.
So
And
um
let me ask you this, though, Chad. Let me back up for a
sure.
second, because it's still in the same vein of question, but um, talking about Elsewhere's approach of watch dancer, get inspired, go practice. What do you think? What do you think the Where do you think it's changed from that now?
I know that yeah.
And do you kind of follow what I'm asking here?
Yes.
Because that to me that's the same, that is the same way that I practiced. It was because we also at that time kind of had no other choice than to just kind of remember
Right,
and
yeah.
go back and like kind of replicate, but not replicate every single move. You were just kind of like they kind of did something like this and it felt like this. Um, I feel like it's a bit different now,
Yeah.
because we do have so many video references. So could you just talk about how that approach, how finding that approach and being disciplined about that approach, how that would be now?
Well, I think one of the most important things, you know, about the culture to me at that time
Mm-hmm.
was originality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was one of the most respected things, at least among my peers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, you know, like I said, Elsewhere was practically ostracized from the scene. So there was
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, even back then there was that like from certain camps and certain groups that want or desire to homogenize, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's all out of
Right.
fear, you know what I
Right. Of
mean? If you're,
course. Yeah.
it's out of fear of evolution and fear of
Mm-hmm.
change and something else coming in
Mm-hmm.
and overtaking, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But amongst my peers, like that's what it was about. It was about originality. And
Right.
even if I met somebody that I really was drawn to and really loved, like I didn't want to go train with that person and be a
Right.
copy of them, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
I wanted to be inspired and find my own thing so that I could train and come back to the circle and come
Right.
back to the jam and be like, look what I did.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
an excited little like toddler. Like, look,
Absolutely.
daddy,
Yeah.
look what I
Right.
did.
Right.
Like, look
Right.
what I made. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
And that was like such a huge factor. And simultaneously, there was not an inkling, not a thought that you could make a dime or gain any fame or and I feel very I think
Okay.
back about this a lot and I feel very lucky and fortunate that I didn't have that drive. I had the drive to entertain my peers. You know what I mean? I had the drive for mastery, to blow people's minds. I
Yeah.
had the drive to be hard, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
dope and to hit hard and animate well and be on beat and be in
Right.
the pocket and have musicality. Like
Yes.
these were all innate drives that over time and with that like you know risk and reward, that positive feedback that I developed a passion for, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But never in there did I ever think for a split second that I was going to, if I danced like Elsewhere, that I was going to get recognized and I was going to get famous.
Right.
I was around when that was happening, and I saw that happen to him, you know what I mean. But in my mind I just took that as a fluke.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and also just like, man, this dude's crazy. Like,
Right.
that
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
Like,
Right.
he's just so nuts that,
Right.
like, of
That
course,
somebody's gonna be,
yeah,
yeah,
of course he's gonna
right.
go viral. Of course
Yeah,
he's gonna book
exactly.
commercials and stuff. Like, I
Exactly.
don't have that. Like,
Right, right.
I'm just trying to be like respected and recognized in this
Right, right.
underground culture that
Yeah.
I'm into. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So with that change, you know, with that, you know, modern day ability to see a formula and try to replicate it, you know what I mean? To see you and, you know, or see fiction or something and go, well, he's doing this, that, and the other. And if I copy him
Right,
and I dance
exactly.
just like him, if I incorporate those elements, that'll get me to the same place.
Exactly.
Missing the whole point, missing the whole way and the whole formula that got these people there in the first place, which was ignoring all of that and just expressing what they were passionate about and working their ass off to achieve these seemingly obscure goals and, you know, like interests in mastery. That's what got them there. You know what I mean? That's what got you there. That's what got me there is, you know, not that, you know, I'm going to be in Step Up if I get dope at the robot.
Right.
That never crossed my mind. That never crossed my mind. I had to get talked into all that stuff. Literally over and over. Like, people had to harp on me, and like Chris Scott and Adam Savani and Nick Wilson, and I remember Carrie, like, and Robert Hoffman, and I remember talking about it with you and stuff, you know what I mean? And like, and I always had the perspective of like, you know, I got into dance late. Like, finding the real passion for it, it was like late in life. You know what I mean? It wasn't even until I was like probably 18 or 19 to, you know, where I was like, I want to really get into this and really like train and practice and like, you know, be a part of this culture, you know? So I pretty much made that choice to just do robot, just do animation, just do popping, bopping style. You know what I mean? I made that conscious choice to not try to like start picking up, you know, hip hop choreo, or just to do what I needed to do to make it, you know what I mean, in the industry, because I was content just being, you know, just earning my stripes in this underground scene, in this underground culture, you know. So it took coaxing, and it took time and effort on the part of a lot of my like friends and colleagues and stuff to kind of like get me to even pursue any type of career. And I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I've been extremely lucky and blessed, and I count my lucky stars like literally every day, and sing, you know, the praises of all the people who kind of like, you know, gave me opportunities and opened doors for me. And one of those big, you know, one of the biggest, you know, doors that was open for me was when John Chu and this is like Chris and Adam, you know, because I used to teach them, and they were like, dude, you got to get in the next Step Up movie, or you got to meet John Chu and be in one of his projects or something, you know what I mean? And I'm like, man, I've been through this, because I had auditioned for some stuff. People would see me out at a club or whatever and be like, you know, I remember the producers of You Got Served brought me in to audition and stuff. And then, you know, I would audition and I would like, you know, blow the roof off the place, and like everybody would be like, yo, like, dude, what? Like, and it was just, you know, again, back to what I was saying before, like the fact of the matter is that like, it was for me, and the culture that I came from was about originality. You know what I mean? So I was coming out. Nobody had no one had ever seen anything like that before. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so I was like, you know, auditioning for stuff randomly, and then they'd always say like, dude, that's crazy. Like, what else can you do? You know what I mean? Can you do like 5, 6, 7, 8? Like, you know? And I was just like, no. That you don't get that good at this by picking up. Maybe in 2017, these kids today can do everything, but back then it was like you were good at one thing, or either that, or you were like kind of okay at like a bunch of things. You know what I mean? So it was always that. You know what I mean? It was always, dude, that's crazy. Like what can we do with this guy? I don't know what to do with this guy. Like he can't be in the, you know,
can't be in the group
in the choreo. Like
exactly.
So. And so later on, like when I met Chu, it was at Adam's house. Adam brought me over to his house. They were like getting some friends together or whatever. And me and Adam are sessioning in his room back in his parents' garage. That was like his room back then.
We're talking about Adam Savani, by the way.
Adam Savani, Moose.
Yeah.
We're sessioning back there, and John Chu like kind of sneaks in the room and is like kind of secretly watching, you know what I mean? And he starts like filming on his little, I think he had one of those flip cams. Do you remember those things that looked
Man.
like a cell phone?
Yeah. With the little
Yeah.
one button and the, yeah,
Yeah, it was like the
absolutely. Yeah, of
first, one of the
course. Yeah.
first little,
Yeah.
digital video
Yeah.
cameras that you could
Because
shoot
it had the
straight.
little USB thing that you just,
It
yep,
was
got you.
straight
Yep,
for
absolutely.
putting on the computer
Yep,
and
yep.
uploading. Designed straight for that. I think he was filming on that, maybe not. But he starts like he's like, "Whoa, that was crazy!" Like
Mm-hmm.
after I got down and he's like, "I want to put you in something. I want to use you for something." And I was like, "Look, man, like." Straight up, like I just want you to know, like this is it. This is what I do. Like
Yeah.
I don't, I
Yeah,
can't spin
yeah.
on my head. I can't do choreo.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
no training, nothing. This is
Right,
it.
right.
And he's like, no, 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 no. Like that's perfect. Like, dude, I just want you to do what you do. And I was like,
Oh,
whoa.
right.
So that was the first time someone in his position was took what I do at face value and was like, that was enough. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
yeah, it was a
I think it's just interesting too because when I think back to that time and it kind of it's because when you're with someone like when you were going to the other auditions where they're basically trying to plug and play, right?
yes.
You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
no
of
shade to
course.
anybody. It's just the the name of the game. You have somebody that has so much original talent and honestly so much vast potential if a creative person gets their hands on them. And I think you met Chu at a time when he had so much room to do literally whatever he wanted to do
Right.
creatively, right?
Yeah.
Because there weren't the big restraints of the the big companies and this and that. It's just when you have free creative reign over something that you've never seen
Sure.
before, then the juices get to flowing there. So I think that was like a little bit, if without sounding corny, like a very divine intervention. Do you know
No,
what I
it
mean?
was. I
Really,
mean, timing. Timing is everything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they always say who you know is everything
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
industry, and it's so true. And
Yeah.
it's not, and it's never a matter of like, networking or
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
it's a matter of those like authentic friendships that you've made over the years with no ulterior motive. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And then
Exactly.
something comes up from that, and I mean, I did not foresee a career as, a popper, you know what I
Right,
mean, or
right.
a robot dancer, you
Right.
know what I mean? But given the opportunity, I was like, let's
do it.
run with
Of
this, you know
course,
what I mean?
yeah.
And it was cool for me because at that time in my like, life as a dancer, like I had kind of hit like a plateau. You know
Right.
what I mean? I
Right.
had achieved a lot of the goals I wanted to achieve. I had done a lot of what I wanted to do, and it it kind of reinvigorated me. You know what I mean? And like injected me with
Right.
art and culture
Right.
and being around like all these other masters of their craft. You know what I mean? And it's funny because like part of my resistance, to the whole thing was like I came from this underground culture that's kind of, the industry is
Right.
is
Of
the
course.
antichrist.
Of
You know what I
course,
mean?
yeah,
The industry
yeah.
is the devil, and
Yeah.
and I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. You know what I mean? I had firsthand experience of industry coming to events and taking and using it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Without
Right.
any credit, without any,
Right.
without hiring any of those people.
Right.
And I saw it firsthand. So I was kind of like, oh, I don't know, like,
Right.
but my thing always was, and this is, what I told Chu, like right off the bat was just like, I'm going to do me. Like, I'm going to do this my way. And if you want to record it, cool.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? If you want to, so that was always my thing. Like I wanted to represent authentically like what I was about, you know what I mean? And I'm grateful again, you know what I mean, for that opportunity, but I'm most grateful for the opportunity to represent myself as an artist and represent my culture, you know what I mean, and represent the scene that I'm from and my OGs and do right by them, you know what I mean, and
yeah.
like not have them watch this thing and be like, dude, what is
Yeah.
this guy doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
they've got him like doing salsa out here or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Because the street dance culture is can be very harsh, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
And and even to this day, like I had a good run. I had a really good run with the culture where they kind of left me alone and they kind of they showed me nothing but love. But you know, you get to a certain place and you do some stuff.
Well, I mean, it's you know, it's well, it's just competitive by nature, you know, and I think just sometimes you when you have like the mainstream machine behind you for whatever amount of time, that just really provides extra ammunition because there's actually a mentor of mine, Jeff Thacker, who told us when we were on So You Think. Sorry, it was like you can take the status and walk out of the room and walk into auditions and people can have two reactions and be like, oh, that's the guy from So You Think You Can Dance. Oh my God, that's the guy from So You, or oh, that's the dude from So You Think. That's the dude from So You Think You Can Dance. It's the same kind of situation where you know you book commercials, you book a movie, you're in mainstream, you're out of there now. So there's people that's gonna be like, oh my gosh, Mad Chad, like yo, that's Mad Chad, and be like, yo, that's Mad Chad. I'm about, you know.
Yeah, and like, sometimes,
you know, like,
and sometimes it'll be the same person having both of those reactions at different times. Over time, you know what I mean? Like it changes.
Yeah.
But look, I've got, you know, I'm grounded and I have a good perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, I do what I can to keep myself humble and aware of, you know, what's coming and what the kids are doing today. And I don't think for a second that I'm still on top or I'm still like, I know when people are coming at me like that, I'm like, no, you're good, dude. You got this. Like you already,
yeah, let's just get down.
Yeah. You don't have to like prove anything to me. Like you're already, and whether or not you're in a movie or in a commercial or you're on a show or whatever, to me, that's irrelevant or should be irrelevant. Now, again, like I am massively grateful that I get to, you know, make a career out of this thing. And like, that's kind of my work and my goal every day is like keeping the dream alive, you know, seeing how long I can keep the robot paying my bills, you know? But to even get that opportunity in the first place, I know most dancers don't get that. You know what I mean? They don't. But that's no reason to not you know, strive for mastery. You know what I mean? And like, because to me that's what it's about. You know, in anything that you do, it's about that risk and reward. You know, first of all, you have to take the risk. You have to take the risk of sucking, of being bad. And that's like, I deal with this all the time. Like I do jujitsu a little bit and I take on little things that are meant mostly to kind of humble me. And I take on things to purposely kind of suck at, you know what I mean? To remind myself of the journey and the path, you know what I mean? Of getting, and how I got to where I got. I wasn't dope, like
right off the bat.
No, it was like, dude, I trained for 2 years straight, night and day, before I even, and even like when the step up stuff came out and everything, I was still like, am I ready to be put on, to be immortalized on tape? You know what I mean? On video, like, am I ready to? And that was like a big factor for me. You know what I mean? So like, and that was a big thing as far as re-inspiring me and re-motivating me to like train again and like, you know, because it's like, I'm gonna be, I guess, immortalized. Absolutely, you know what I mean? On forever, yeah. So,
well, let me ask you this, Chad. Let me backtrack for a second because, I mean, there's no question that you have achieved and are still working at perfecting your level of mastery, right? So could you talk about your training experiences with Bop and Andre? Like first how that even came about from you the last time that you saw him was you know, in a circle, or maybe you'd seen him a couple more times. What initiated this training process, and what lengths did you have to go through to get trained by, you know, a legend?
Yeah, and this is I think this is a really good question because I think it touches on another difference between the culture then and the culture now,
Mm-hmm.
and not like there's so much good about the culture now that I'm seeing that like I take inspiration from, you know what I mean? But I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's still things to pass on, you know what I mean? And um, I think mentorship is a big missing factor
Mm-hmm.
in today's culture. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
In the dance scene and probably any underground scene.
Right.
Because we have access to so much. We have
Mm-hmm.
access to social media. We have access to workshops. We
Mm-hmm.
have access to YouTube. We have access to so much
Mm-hmm.
all the time that we don't have to seek a person out
Right.
to learn those
Mm-hmm.
skills. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to take part of that journey on our own,
Mm-hmm.
get to a certain point where we're like kind of stuck and
Right.
then
Right.
seek, guidance,
Right. Right.
So about about a year after I first met Bob and Andre, during that year,
Mm-hmm.
I trained extensively and I practiced a lot with a guy named Tabo.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Tabo were kind of like figuring Bop and Andre out from a distance. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Okay.
Because as much as I wanted to be original and I really like, well, you know what, Elsewhere's whole approach like really
Mm-hmm.
resonated with me. There's something about bopping and animation and robotics and everything that's very technical. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's technique. You can move however you want, but you have to have the technique
Mm-hmm.
to look a certain way. So me and Tabo would be, he had this guy's an OG from Okinawa, Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and he lived in Riverside, and he met Bop and Andre because he lived in Riverside as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Tabo is one of my biggest mentors. He's like
Mm-hmm.
Yoda of the popping scene. He's like this
Okay.
underground guy who like used to be a Jedi and then like went into hiding and like he just teaches people. That's it.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
All right.
So me and him would kind of like sit and train and practice and like try to figure out like how Bob and Andre's doing this, how
Mm-hmm.
he's doing that, like
Mm-hmm.
technically, you know what I mean? And then he took me to this thing in downtown LA. It was a event in Little Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a funk kind of event. Some poppers
Mm-hmm.
went, and Bop and Andre was there, and he was leaving, and I didn't see him, but like Tabo saw him, and he's like, "Oh, Bop and Andre was here, but he's leaving
Mm-hmm.
now," and so I
Mm-hmm.
like went out there to try to meet him. And Tabo like yelled and like stopped him and it was just pretty much like, you got to see this guy. You got to see this guy. He like saw you. He's inspired, like whatever. And you got to see him. And so I got down for him, and I was all nervous. You know what I mean? Like I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay,
Yeah.
here we go. Like boom, boom,
Right.
like
Right.
whatever,
Right.
freaking
Right.
out. And he was impressed. He was like, dude, I've never seen anybody like pick up like bopping style like from a distance like
Right.
that well, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I was like, oh man, thank you so much, like, I want to hang with you, I want to meet with you, whatever. And essentially I think I got his phone number. I
Mm-hmm.
think I got his phone number that night, but it was like literally it was a process of just pestering him,
Right. Right.
pestering him. He lived in Riverside, which was kind of far for me at the time,
Right.
but I just made myself
Mm-hmm.
like, I just pestered him until he let me be around him.
Right. Right.
And then I would like, I would buy him snacks and like
Right.
I'll buy him like Church's chicken and
Right.
like
Right.
I would get him like, this is what I could offer to him. See,
Mm-hmm.
to me it was like, and this is what's missing now is, people hit me up on social media all the time, like whatever, like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, I want to do a collab, or,
Right. Right.
shout out my video,
Yeah.
or whatever. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to help everyone. I really do. I want to see
Right.
the scene like grow and develop, but like, it's hard when there's no exchange.
Right. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, you know what I mean? There's no
Yeah.
give and take. There's no, so for me, like, and this was big in the underground
Mm-hmm.
culture at this time, and it still exists. It's still there, but not as much. It's almost like this, like samurai code or this secret club or something. You know what I
Right.
mean? Where like,
Right.
like Fight Club, like he has to sleep out there on the
Right. Right.
on the porch for like 3 days or something,
Right.
or You know, the samurai has to like the student has to make like rice for the master for like 2 years or something. You know what I mean? And so that's what I had to do. You know, I had to like just be around him. And there had to be an exchange of value there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so the thing that I could offer to him was, I could get him into clubs, and I was friends with a few dancers and stuff that I wasn't even 21 at the time, but like I could get into clubs because of the dancing, and it was like, do you know Seymour? Seymour, yeah, him and his brother or his cousin were a comedy duo, and they used to perform at Carnival and stuff, and he was like a b-boy slash locker slash he had his own
he did a little bit of everything.
And he was a comedian. He was hilarious. But he would get me into clubs, and so I would bring Bob and Andre, and I would just walk Bob and Andre around and like introduce him to everyone, like the club owner, the promoters, the whatever, and that was like a big deal for him. To me it was just like, that's what you do. Like I was like, this is the guy who inspired me. Like, check this dude out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but he really valued that. He like really, that was like a big deal to him. You know what I mean? And he's from an era and a time where like, you know, being an African American, it's even hard to get into a club in the first place. You know what I mean? So I was taking him to like Hollywood clubs and stuff, and like he just, that was special to him. You know what I mean? I think at first he was kind of like, what's up with this white kid? You know what I mean? Suburban white kid trying to learn this underground stuff. You know what I mean? And but I paid my dues. I used to sleep on his couch or on his floor, and like his family was really cool and chill about it. Like they didn't really care that I was around, but and you know, it's funny because it would be like months of like hanging out with him, and then he would show me something. Just very subtle. Like the majority of the time, I mean, he's like, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain him. He's like an idiot savant or something. He's like he can't like write or spell very well, but like he's a genius. He's an absolute genius. Like this guy was a super high level martial artist at one time, like competing in China, and he was like an alternate for the Olympic team or something like that. I don't know specific details, but all this stuff over time, he'd be talking about all this stuff, and like I just be like, you know, okay, cool, like show me some bopping stuff, like how do you do that, like one thing, or when you hit and stop, is it 3 shakes or is it 2 shakes, or you know what I mean, like you know, when you do the cyclops, you know, are you tensing your muscles, or is it kind of that like loose vibration? You know what I mean? And I'd be trying to like get like, you know, he had all these like characters that he did, and I wanted to know more about the technique behind it. You know what I mean? And he would be talking about, you know, martial arts, or he used to be a pool shark, and he used to talk about credit, and he used to be like a financial advisor in Canada, and he's seriously like a genius, like a real like in his house he had he could barely type on a computer, like barely type, like hunting peck is what I call it. You like kind of hunt for the key and then you peck it. You hunt for the key and then you peck it. And that's how he typed. And typing that way, this dude had like 10 stacks of stuff that he had written on various subjects, like dating, or finance, or you know, social situations, or he just had like he had a different perspective or a different answer for everything. So I was around him just like hearing all this stuff, just kind of waiting for some nuggets of dance gold. You know what I mean? And but he taught me a lot about a lot of things, most of it having nothing to do with dance, to be honest. But being around him and just seeing, you know, what the human body is capable of, I think inspired me, because there's a few moments I remember where, like, you know, he's a very gifted individual. He has, you know, a very high percentage of like fast twitch muscle fibers, I would say, which allow a different level of explosiveness and you know, animated abilities.
Right.
That also is like a martial arts thing for him too, you know. But like I remember being on a flight to Boston with him, and like I would you know, ask him to do things with me, like, you know, go to events and stuff like that. And then he started getting like some teaching gigs, and like he would bring me along a few of the times, and we went to Boston. And I remember like we hadn't slept in like 2 or 3 days or something, and we're like on the flight, and it was like a red eye in the middle of the night, and I kind of passed out, and I woke up, and he's just over there next to me in the seat next to me, and you know, this is like 2003, I want to say, and he doesn't know, you know, he's not a finger tutter. He has like, this is a new thing, like finger tutting is brand new, and this dude's over there just like animating his fingers like just something I've never seen before or since. And he would do that. He would just reveal like a little like pull out a little like magical box and like
guess what, I can do this
and then it would just disappear into the ether, and you're just like, wow, like that's possible. Okay. I remember at an event, me and Pop and John had a moment. We had just met. I think maybe this is like the second time we met. We were at an event, and someone came out, and they were ticking, whatever, and this person had like some beef with Bop and Andre, and he's like he did a whole round of like ticking, and Bop and Andre came out and was like, he stood there and put his hand up, and he was like, tick, 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 like, no. And then he went tick, 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 tick. And then he went boom in a full circle. Like, so he can do, I don't know the, like there's like, you know, there's like quarter beats, and then there's eighth notes, and there's 16ths, and then there's 30 seconds. Right. So like that's 30 seconds. Right. And that's as fast as anybody can go, right? No, he can go another. And see, that's the thing with bopping. That's interesting about like the way he moves. Like, he's not vibrating just to vibrate. It's musical. It's on the beat. It's in the rhythm. It's a rhythmic structure.
Right.
So he's not just, you know, you see a lot of dancers, they'll just kind of like do something, and then they'll just vibrate just to vibrate.
Right.
Or there'll be like the you know, the drop in the song, and they'll just vibrate the drop. His is like, it's all structured. Bopping is all structured, and it's all various like robotic movements, and it breaks down from like the basic boom, 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 boom to boom, 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 boom to ding, 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 ding to, you know what I mean? And like it's all mathematical and musical. You know, you can use it to any song. But he has a different level of vibration that he can do. And I just remember he did that, like he spun his arm in a full 360, like the face of a clock. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I remember just like my eyes bugging out of my head and quickly turning and looking at Pop and John. And we were the two only people in the room who understood what he just did.
Right.
Like everybody else was just like, cool, like whatever. But we were like, and we had that moment of just like, he's not, that's not normal.
Right.
That's not normal.
Right.
You shouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
So I've had a lot of those moments with him. So that, like being around him, seeing that was always inspiring. And he didn't really go over technique a lot with me. That was kind of like, a lot of the technical stuff was like me and Tabo figuring it out on our own. And I think, again, like that's another thing that, you know, I think is really important that the culture currently like should explore, is that solo journey, you know, that solo journey of just figuring it out on your own, because through that you find out what your physiology can do. You know what I mean? You find out how your body works. You're not going to be able to hit like me. there might be a few people who have a similar body structure to me out there, but it's going to be very rare that somebody's going to be able to use the same exact technique that I use. I don't use Bop and Andre's technique to create a big explosive hit. I use a different technique. And I found that technique by sitting there and standing in front of them, well, not sitting, but standing in front of the mirror and just going,
right.
Oh, wait, that was something. Okay.
Right.
What was that?
Right.
No, that's not it. Okay, that's something.
Right.
And just literally trying to figure it out, like, and figuring out how my muscles are able to achieve that look or that feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. For me, like, what I do, popping is a dance, right? And, you know, I've taken flack for, like, not being a dancer or whatever. But, you know, I think we're pretty clear on the definition of what dance is. And you can get into, like, you know, specifics and idiosyncrasies of, like, groove and funk and all that. And I'm down with all that. But, like, you know, dance is moving your body to the beat or rhythm of the music. Yeah. That's it. That's it. And so I'm a dancer. But to me, the thing that sets popping apart from other dance styles is the illusion. There's different, like, techniques and footworks and it takes a lot from a lot of different things, right? But to me, the thing that makes it special and magical is the fact that you see somebody popping, and when they hit really hard, boom, you're like, how, like, it's like, it looks like electricity is zapping them or something, you know what I mean? And they throw a wave, and it looks like energy is just passing through their body, and you're like, how is that possible? Like, it's like sleight of hand magic, you know. B-boying is like big magic, and, like, poppers are like warlocks. Absolutely. You know what I mean? We're like,
but the common thread also being having a great deal of patience with yourself and the process, and then B, that kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, that that solo journey, and I mean a real solo journey, y'all. Like, of course you're gonna train with people, and I'm talking with you, but then also saying this out here too. Of course you're gonna train with people, like, you know, you got your sessions going on and this and that. But beyond that, like, you know, like you said, habitual training. Like, there are times when I'm in the kitchen now and I don't know why I'm dancing, but I'm dancing. Still making stuff up. Do you know what I mean? Would you say that you learned a great deal of patience from Bop and Andre, or did you go into you guys' relationship with a great deal of patience, which provided you the willpower to stay, even though you weren't getting the nuggets that you were looking for instantly? That was a long ass question, but I hope you
it's a combination, right? Because before I met him, I had already put in a certain amount of work, and a lot of that already required a lot of patience, you know what I mean, and a lot of, like, focus and determination. And even just learning how to b-boy in my parents' garage, you know what I mean? I mean, over the course of my journey, I would say at least 90% of my practice and training and sessioning and everything is 100% by myself, you know? So I did a certain amount of practice up until, you know, meeting Bop and Andre. But I did get excited, you know, once I started getting exposed to more, you know, and he was there this is probably the biggest piece of advice he ever gave me. And he would tell me over and over again, and he would see Bop and Andre's whole thing is, he thinks his style is the best, right? Because it's his style.
Right.
He thinks his style is the best because it's his style. He likes his style. That's what he chose to do.
Right.
But he doesn't think his style is the best in the sense that everybody else should be doing his exact style, right?
Okay.
So he's about figuring out what other people's best thing is.
Right.
And he always saw in me something different, something, and he would tell me, he was like, I can't do what you can do. You can't do what I can do, but I can't do what you can do. I can't move slow and controlled as well as you can. I don't have that same I don't have that same mannequin, like, mime type of ability. Slow down. Like, that's your shit. That's that's your style. Like, don't try to, like, move around and dance around and get all crazy. Like, come back to that. You know what I mean? And that was advice that Bob and Andre gave me, and that was also advice that Flat Top gave me, who I haven't touched on Flat Top, but like Flat Top is probably, if not as influential on me, like close to as Bob and Andre. Like Flat Top was a huge inspiration in my life. And it's funny because after seeing Dre, his name is Andre Diamond. So Flat Top called him Diamond. That was like his name for him. And so when I first met Flat Top, he saw me and he was like, you gotta find Diamond. You gotta meet Diamond. You gotta get with Diamond. And I was like, well, who's that? I don't know. Diamond. Sounds crazy, like this perfect crystalline structure. Like, I'm down. But little did I know that I'd already seen him. And that's already what I was inspired by. It was interesting. But they both gave me the advice, you know. Bob and Andre was more like, slow down. He would just say, like, he would see me get in the circle and I would want to do like more animated, and I would get, you know, and I had learned how to hit, and so I wanted to like pop more, and he was just like, that's cool, but like slow down, settle, get back into your stuff, make sure you don't like lose that, you know what I mean? And that was and that was Flat Top told me that directly, like, don't lose that. Don't ever lose that. And this is after like a year or two of dancing. He was like, don't lose that. You know what I mean? And so that always stuck with me. And I think it's a piece of advice for like, you know, the new generation and new people coming up is like I've done this multiple times in my dance life and dance career. Don't dishonor what you're like, the gifts that you're given. Don't dishonor what you're naturally drawn to. And essentially, like, you don't have to swim upstream. You know what I mean? If something doesn't vibe with you, or if something doesn't really, I mean, work your ass off. You know what I mean? Work hard. Yeah, of course. But like, find out what your thing is and hone that. You know what I mean? And don't think that just because whatever other style is the style right now, that you shouldn't be working on what your thing is. You know what I mean? Because like, for me, I'm a perfect example of that. Like, robot wasn't cool. Like, robot was not cool. And I made a conscious choice. I was like, this is my thing. Like, as I started developing my skills, I'm like, this is my thing. Like, I want to be the guy that brings robot back. Like, I want to be the guy that, and this is even just in the popping scene. Like, robot wasn't cool in the popping scene. It was like kind of silly and funny, and like, it's a part of it. But when I got into it, electric boogaloo style popping was the style. Like, that was it. And if you weren't doing that, you weren't popping. You know what I mean? And so I was like, no, this is like a style too. You know what I mean? Like bopping is an authentic style that started in the 70s. Like, it's been around, you know what I mean? And I wanted to be the gateway to bringing that style back into the limelight, you know, because back in the 70s and 80s, like Bop and Andre, Robot Prince. I mean, I don't know, like Shrimp, Boogaloo Shrimp is of bopping. He's of bopping lineage. So he learned from Deuce, who learned from Robot Prince and Dre. And I mean, I could go on about the bopping like lineage and the bopping history, but there's so much there that people just don't really know much about. And like I said, when I first started doing like you know, AC/DC and LXD and Step Up and stuff like that, like, I wanted to honor them. You know what I mean? I wanted to honor those styles, and so that was a big factor for me. Like, I didn't want to change my style to be accepted by the culture. I was like, this is my thing, and I'm going to do it authentically. And I want to be a gateway to bring this style back. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a big thing, like, to, you know, a piece of advice I'd have for, like, you know, kids today or people coming up is like, you know, find what you're good at. Or find something that, you know, for me, it was like something blew my mind. And we get things that blow our minds all the time, but you try it out. Like, oh, this is crazy. Like, first of all, you got to take the risk, you know what I mean, of sucking at something. You got to try it out. You got to put in the work, see if it works for you, see if it, you know, fits with your body, see if you're making the progress that you want to make. Then you get the feedback, you get the reward. And then that, to me, like, you know, you hear this a lot, like do what you're passionate about. You know what I mean? And I 100% believe that. But I think that you have to cultivate that passion.
Right.
You have to develop that passion through work. You know what I mean? And that's you take the risk, you get the reward, and then that feedback loop is what builds the passion. You know what I mean?
I think we're in a good place because that kind of leads into what I'm going to ask you next. And this is dealing a lot with patience and the instant gratification, because you were kind of talking about how you kind of get this after you get this, you put the work in, you get this like kind of loop of feedback. But now that loop of feedback is so instant and so quick that that sometimes I question if it has the same substance as feedback that you don't get just on the digital space, right? So with that being said, it's very popular now, musicality, and
Right.
and this question comes from our good friend Asia George. Shout out Asia. And he wanted to ask, since it's to show your musicality now is so popular, how fast can you move? How fast can you move and hit every little sound in the music?
Right.
How does someone like you still get such impact by taking 4 counts to move? You know what I mean? Like actually taking a seat in patient movement. How is that possible now when and this is me kind of fusing my question into that too, is that how is that possible now when we have 3-second to 5-second attention spans, but you take your time when you move?
Yeah. Okay. I think there's a lot of different ways to unpack that question and like break it down. But one of the first things that comes to my mind is this idea of sort of being, I guess, an outlier, right? When everybody's when everybody's working for, you know, the instant response or the instant gratification or doing whatever the cool thing is at the moment, you know, doubling down on the long game, I think is one of the best ways you can separate yourself and stand out. You know what I mean? Anybody could do what I do. There's no magic trick to what I do. You know what I mean? There's no secret. I mean, I guess the secret is that there is no secret.
Right. Yeah.
That is the secret. You know what I
right.
mean? So I've always made a big point of one of the big words that always like resonates with me and comes to mind when I think about my style and my approach and what I do is contrast. The contrast between control and dynamism and explosiveness. You know what I mean? And I'm not the most dynamic dancer by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. But when I do use some dynamic movement, it's coming from this. The contrast is so extreme. You know what I mean? When I glitch or warp, as I call it, like it comes out of nowhere when I'm moving. Boom.
Right.
As my joints crack
Right.
and pop. When I do that, it stands out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
course.
when I do a judge solo or a showcase or whatever, and it's the first I move 4 times in the first 30 seconds of the whole solo. You know, the fact of the matter is that nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is having that patience to do that. Nobody else took the time to double down on those techniques and those skills, even though they may not be the cool thing or the popular thing. You know what I mean? So I truly believe that the long game is one of the most important factors in tent poling, you know what I mean? And kind of sticking out in a crowd and separating yourself, you know what I mean? So just practicing on your thing and what makes you you and what makes you different and special, and dude, if you love musicality and beat freaking, you know what I mean? Like I still to this day give full credit to Flat Top for introducing everyone to that game.
Right.
Homeland, I want to say 2001 or 2002. He used to do this all the time on the street,
Right.
street
Yeah, of
performing
course.
all the time.
Yeah.
But Bop and Andre put on Beatbox by Art of Noise, which is like an 8 or 9 minute long song that has random sounds and random beats, and it's, you know, you can't pick up on the rhythm and the melody like right away. It's just like so obscure and random. And he put it on because he knew Flat Top couldn't resist. It was just like that song is like a drug for him.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean? So he
right.
put it on, and Flat Top just went ahead and like dissected
Sliced
this
it up.
whole song
Yeah.
like for 8 minutes. For 8 minutes straight, just like dissected every element of the song. Like, I mean, I'm talking a song where like there's like 10 seconds of silence and then
Right.
like a random "Nyeh,"
Right. Yeah.
and like
yeah.
he would like like do a little.
Right. Right.
It's just
Yeah.
at the time no one was
Of
doing
course. Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And still to this day, there's something very like it's very readily digestible. You know what I mean? Anybody can understand that. We listen to music our whole lives. There's something deeper for us. You know what I mean?
Right.
As human beings, it's just in us.
Right,
So
right.
to see somebody move and break down a song,
Right.
it just makes sense to anybody. It makes sense to us. So I honor that a lot. You know what I mean? And I don't. If that's your entire criteria for, you know, one person like being better than another person, it doesn't make sense to me. But I accept it as a part of like what we do. You know what I mean?
Right,
And like
right.
the culture we're in. But yeah, I think the reason like I'm able to still, you know, turn heads or get attention is because of the contrast. You know what I mean? Whether it's the contrast within my own dance like performance or solo, or it's the contrast between me and other dancers. I mean, I'm not the only robot dancer anymore by any means, and it's so I still have to like double down on the things that make me different. You know what I mean? The things
Right.
that make me me, and the things that make me stand out. And I do like musicality, but to me, it's kind of like a parlor trick. You know what I mean? You don't want to overuse it.
Right.
You don't want to, you know. And I came from
I see, yeah,
an
yeah.
era where it's like, you catch it if you can.
Right.
You know, but it's not about that.
Right.
It's about you know, feeling the music, being on beat first and foremost. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Getting into the structure of the song,
Right.
and expressing, you know, the way it makes you move and the way it
Right.
makes you feel.
Right.
And then, you know, if you catch that part, you catch that part. But it's not like that's not the goal. That's not the objective. You know what I mean? Like Bop and Andre's a great example of someone who he's just a dancer, right? He just dances. And sometimes he kind of knows a song and he might hit like a little something in the song, but it's more so about dancing to the song, not about freaking the beat. You know what I
Right,
mean? And like, I mean, Flat Top, that's like his thing, or one of his like, you know, signature. And you can't compare it to Flat Top. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You can't like wiggle your shoulders around, or
Right.
or like do some little air cuts or whatever, or like come down on one leg and
Right,
vibrate down like
right.
to that little part of the music, and get the same feel that Flat Top's gonna get dissecting an entire song.
right,
You know what I mean?
right. I see.
But I don't hate on that. I don't hate on the rhythm writing, or that's what Flat Top used to call it to me, rhythm writing, or beat freaking, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't hate on it. Sometimes it gets repetitive. If I go to like judge a battle or something, and that's what every response from the crowd is because they freaked a part of the music.
Exactly.
It starts to become sort of, it loses its magic. You know what I mean? It loses its luster.
Of course.
So like, in that respect, I guess my advice would be to like, you know, worry more about doing you and just dancing, and then if it happens organically and naturally, like there's always that magic moment, you know what I mean, in the cipher or in the battle where like you just everything aligns, the stars align, and you hit that part, and it just but I think some versions of like the popping or b-boying or just underground street dance culture have gotten stuck in that feedback loop of musicality, you know what I mean, and beat freaking, and but I think we're moving past that phase. I think we're kind of like
slowly but surely. It's just it's incredibly impressive. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, especially when it's when it's clean, like it's incredibly impressive. It's awesome. But it's in a loop of trying to be replicated, and it's incredibly impressive when it's done right. It is not incredibly impressive when it's not. Like, you know what I'm saying? And
that's what yeah. You know, and that's where it becomes a problem when it's just that's the criteria by which you judge your entire skill set. You know what I mean? Like, and me at the end of the day, I'm all about mastery. You know what I mean? And the cool thing about mastery is you never master anything.
Exactly.
You can get in that realm of mastery, you know what I mean?
Right.
But with art, it's like the level is always changing. You know what I mean? Like maybe in 2007 I was, in the mix as far as like, most animated controlled dancers, you know what I mean? But like God, that rapidly changes so fast, and now I'm just humbly trying to stay relevant, you know what I mean? And trying to like, but still trying to be myself and express, what I was originally passionate about, and express what got me into this, you know what I mean? And try to give back what the spark that I was given, you know what I mean, by many different people.
Which leads me to my last question. Where would you like to see your particular style in the future? And I'm not talking about you just personally, because here's the truth of the matter, especially from my perspective, is I had the pleasure of kind of watching the world discover you, Chad. You know what I mean? Like myself and the people you name, like Chris Scott, Nick Wilson. I'm even gonna say David Moore, Sonia Ty. I mean, like our whole little camp that was around during that time. I got to not only watch the dance world discover you, but then the world discover you as well. So now we have, which leads me to, people like Glitch, like Cyrus, and Dragon House, like shout out to Dragon House, and also just, the little cats, like my little man Merrick, Americana, Ditto. You have all of these people that have kind of broke out of the mold, kind of like yourself, and you don't know that they're so ill at what they're doing until they start, right? They're originals, you know what I mean? They are. So with that, and shout out, sorry, there's so many that I'm thinking about right now. It's just but where would you like to see? Absolutely, Keita. Keita, 100.
Because he's got the swag and the party dances and everything, but the control is like
exactly problem. You know what I mean?
Hold on.
Chill out.
Fiction.
And so, with that being said, where would you like to see it in the future?
Yeah.
What's the last?
Well, it's.
The message,
I'll say. I'm just gonna be real and express two different points of view. The first one is like it's scary, man. It's scary being, the old guy or you know what I mean, and seeing, but it's simultaneously scary and inspiring, and it's just. I love seeing like Dragon House, for example. I love seeing this group or this culture kind of far removed and getting inspired by certain people and then kind of doing kind of what we did, doing what my generation did, which is just like practicing by ourselves, you know what I mean? Like a small group and inspiring each other and everybody trying to be different and trying to bring something new to the game. And then them just like, boom, arriving on the scene and like, you know, I loved seeing, you know, flexing, the growth of and arrival of the flexing scene. Crump, I loved watching. Like I got to see the whole, like I got to see tie-dyes become tie-dyes and Miho become Miho, and like I saw it go from clown to crump to like what it is today. Like it's its own thing now, and like turf styles, and I've got to see like tutting and finger tutting and connecting, and I've got to see the, you know, the flexibility stuff be incorporated, and just I love seeing these obscure elements being incorporated, and I love seeing cultures kind of developing on their own and getting to that point where they've like achieved a certain level of mastery of what they do, and then getting revealed to the general public. You know what I mean? I love seeing that. But it's not necessarily like a thing I want to see from the culture moving forward. It's more of a I think I want them to do. I want them to dig deeper. I want them to dig into and like bite their teeth into like the culture. You know what I mean? I want them to dig deeper into where this shit comes from. And I want like specifically my styles, what I align with, you know what I mean? Like these are LA styles. Like I had to, now I'm not saying everybody needs to go to Watts or Southgate or whatever to learn these styles, but like I did. And now, I mean, with the internet and social media and everything, you have such like easier access, but like I want to see people learn about where it comes from and learn about the lineage. And you know, not everybody has to be like a historian about it. I know that's like boring for a lot of people, but for me, and I know a lot of people like me, like that path, it just it gave me so much more. Like taking that, you know, spending time with my OGs or their lineage, and finding out, you know, going to the Bay and you know, finding out the people that Bop and Andre met in the Bay, and just going on little like sabbaticals to find out history and info. And during that process, it's not just the history that you uncover, it's styles, it's culture that you uncover, and it makes you feel more invested, and I think it makes you better. I think it makes you a better artist, like easily, you know what I mean? And there's so much about, you know, like my history and my lineage, and I'm partially a part of the problem, you know what I mean, when it comes to this, because I don't like to talk. I'm not a big, like when I get one-on-one with a friend or something, like you can't stop me, but I'm not out there saying like, hey, here's my history and here's my people who are anybody asks me, like, you know, Bop and Andre, Flat Top, like Robot Prince, Earthquake, like I let them know who I'm inspired by and my history and how I got where I am. But I think, you know, people like me could do more to help the newer generations, you know, understand where this stuff comes from. But then I think it's also it's part of the responsibility falls on their shoulders to keep it alive. Part of the responsibility lies with them to not let the you know, the various industries distill the culture out of the dance. You know what I mean? And look, I've been honestly, because of who I am and how I look and where I come from, like I've been accused of doing that exact thing because people don't know my history. You know what I mean? They don't know where I come from. But yeah, I implore people to like dig a little deeper. You know what I mean? If you're into popping, learn about the Bay, learn about LA. You know what I mean? Learn about, you know, Fresno and the Electric Boogaloos, and but sort of do that work, do that extracurricular. Like it's not just a fun little thing, you know what I
Right,
mean? It's not
right.
just, to some people maybe it is just that,
Right.
but for other people, like, it's beyond that. It goes beyond that. Like it's life for a lot of people. A lot of people take it a lot more seriously than I do.
Right.
And you know, I try to find balance. You know, I'm a father. I have a 5-year-old daughter.
Right.
I'm trying to support my family, and the popping scene and popping culture, it doesn't always like fit with, you know, my other goals and the life I'm trying to live. But I try to find that balance. You know what I mean? But for a lot of people, where this stuff comes from is like, that's their life, that's their
Right.
livelihood, that's their legacy, you know what I mean? And we need to honor that, you know? And that goes for everyone. That goes for, you know, famous dancers that we know, you know what I mean? Like some of the people you mentioned and stuff, like I implore them, you know what I mean, to be an example for that, you know what I mean? To talk about who they learned from, or who inspired them, to dig into if they're not, you know, tapped in, to tap in a little bit more. You know, it's gonna be, you know, if you're internet famous, it's gonna be a little bit of a task, a little bit of an event to like go to an underground, you know, battle or whatever. You're gonna be taking selfies the whole time, whatever. But like, I feel like that's part of your duty. You know what I mean? I feel like that's part of your role as a ambassador of the art. You know what I mean? To interact with the culture, you know what I mean, and to not only interact with it, but to also give your fans and your people a gateway to it, you know what I mean, and expose it. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more people like digging into the history and the culture of it.
I love it, man. Dude, thank you so much, Doc. We've covered so much. And for the people watching / listening, please, please, please use that incredible tool at your fingertips to research even one of the people that he's talking about, if you're not familiar, and then take the elsewhere approach that we talked about, and put that art out there, man. Chad, where can we find you? Like social?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and YouTube at MADD, MADD. I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/TheRealMadChad. I had a lot of
The fakers.
fake Facebooks on there for a long time.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, it was kind of overwhelming, because like some of them had like over 100,000 likes and stuff, and I'm like,
Oh.
oh no, they're like eclipsing my channel
Yeah,
here. Come
dude,
on.
this is the real Mad Chad.
Yeah, and look up. This is just my bias, my perspective. You
Yeah.
know what I mean, where I come from. But look up Bop and Andre. Look up Flat Top. Look up Tabo. Look up the LA Boppers.
Spell Tabo for me real quick.
Tabo. There's not a lot of footage of
Boom.
him, but a lot of people have learned from him. A lot of high level people have learned from him. Watch some old school footage of Taco, Shrimp. There's a dude named Earthquake, who he's hard to find footage of, but Earthquake, if you can find footage of that guy. Robot Prince. A dude named Gizmo. Gizmo is kind of like my blood brother. He's like, we're kind of from some of the same lineage, but he's out there in the streets of LA, like street performing and really doing it. And he's like, his full-time thing right now is being an ambassador of like bopping style and animation style. So he's out there. You could find him. Gizmo Magnetic. Pop and Chuck is one of my guys who helped me coming up. Yeah, check those guys out.
Check those guys out, man. Thank you so much, Mad Chad.
Yes,
you guys.
absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Drop.